If I were to ask you what's the largest apex predator of all time, the biggest beast to have ever gobbled up little beasties, and the crowned king at the very top of the food chain, who springs to mind? I can almost guarantee your first thought won't be the right answer. Join us as we explore the most colossal carnivores throughout Earth's history.
I'm Stu, this is Debunked, and we're here to sort the truths from the myths and the facts from the misconceptions.
While the term apex predator is sometimes used casually to refer to any big, scary beast, there actually is a technical definition that we should probably take a look at. Essentially, apex predators are organisms found at the very top of a particular food chain, and as such have no natural predators of their own. In other words, apex predators eat other animals, but are not themselves eaten. The relationship between predators and the organisms they feed on is often thought of in terms of trophic levels. An organism's trophic level refers to their position in a food web, which is constituted by all the interconnected food chains found in a given ecosystem. The greater the number of steps an organism is from the very start of the chain, the higher up it is in the food web, and the greater its trophic level. Typically, trophic levels are plotted from 1 to 5, on a scale academics call the fractional trophic level. Organisms at the start of a particular food chain have a fractional trophic level of 1, and apex predators at the top have a fractional trophic level of 5. Naturally, the very bottom of the food web is occupied by organisms known as producers or autotrophs. These species are often things like plants and algae, which do not prey on other living things, and produce their own food from inorganic substances. Very clever. The next major step up are any and all species that cannot biologically produce their own food, and so must feed on other organisms, known as consumers or heterotrophs. Of these, a major group are the herbivores, animals that predominantly feed on producers like plants and algae. This includes mega herbivores like the African elephant. Moving up the trophic scale, we have a number of intermediate heterotrophic species on the food chain, either carnivorous or omnivorous, that may often be big enough to eat heterotrophs, but are certainly still small enough to be eaten by animals larger than themselves. When a heterotrophic animal is not exclusively herbivorous and has no natural predators of its own, it can then be described as an apex predator. These species are often exclusively carnivorous, inhabiting the highest trophic levels at the very top of their respective food chains, granting them a trophic level of 5. Of course, this system of ranking species by their position on the food chain poses some interesting questions. Perhaps the most obvious is the issue of where humans sit on the scale of trophic levels. It would be easy to mistake our global dominance as a species as equivalent to being apex predators. But as voracious omnivores, generally happy to eat any and all plants or animals as long as they're well seasoned, humans actually fall in the mid-range of the trophic level scale, with a score of only 2.21, comparable to animals like pigs and anchovies. Bit of a letdown. Of course, this low ranking is somewhat misleading, as diets vary wildly throughout the global human population, and the score of 2.21 is basically an average of these. Not only that, the meat that most humans eat comes from non-predatory animals, such as chickens and cows, which keeps the number low. Ergo, a vegan who doesn't consume any animal products whatsoever would have an even lower score, closer to 2. However, there are populations of humans with diets consisting of far more meat from predatory animals than the average Homo sapiens. The fractional trophic level of some traditional Inuit communities, with diets consisting almost entirely of seals and whales, would be very close to 5, qualifying them as apex predators within their ecosystem. But the vast majority of us human omnivores sit happily in the mid-range of the trophic scale. Another thing worth noting is that just because an animal inhabits the position of apex predator within its particular ecological niche, that doesn't necessarily make it a big scary beast relative to human beings. Now that we know what an apex predator is, and isn't, we can set about identifying the largest apex predator ever.
Before we explore the lineage of some of today's mega marvels, I'd like to introduce you to MyHeritage DNA, who I've partnered with to offer you the chance to explore your own lineage. MyHeritage sent me a DNA testing kit a few weeks ago. The process only took a few minutes. I simply had to swab the insides of my cheeks, pop those samples into the vials they supplied, and mail them off to the boffins at the MyHeritage lab. And don't worry, your information stays safe. MyHeritage have committed to a privacy policy that will never sell or license genetic data. Now, all of this allows the science folk at the lab to give you a percentage breakdown of your origins across 42 ethnicities and over 2,000 geographic regions. And, on top of that, you could discover new relatives based on your DNA. Today, I have my results, and I'm about to find out what my origins are. Stuart, you are 69.2% English. Well, there we go. I'm an English gent after all. 29.7% North and West European. Okay. And 1.1% Finnish. Look at that, eh? To be honest, I thought I'd have some more Scottish in me. Or at least some Irish. But no, yeah. I'm pretty much all English. Okay, and I've also, those are my ethnicities, but my DNA matches. I've got 12 DNA matches. And then over 8,000 distant relatives. And they're dotted around Western Europe and, yeah, a lot in the States, blimey. And a little bit over in New Zealand and Australia. Cool. Might get exploring some of those relatives soon. Who knows what I might find out. If you'd like to discover your origins, MyHeritage have a promotion on right now. Just click on my link in the description or scan the QR code on screen now to order your DNA kit and enter the code DEBUNKED to get free shipping.
Let's start on home turf, land. Though good old terra firma hosts many large carnivorous beasties, the largest is in fact the fearsome polar bear. A semi-aquatic marine mammal that can survive on land, but much prefers sea ice and water. Adult males usually weigh in at somewhere between 300 and 800 kilos. According to Guinness World Records, the largest polar bear ever found weighed just under 950 kilos, so almost a ton. That's heavier than 2 grand pianos, or roughly 8 Dwayne Johnsons. Polar bears are also very tall. On all fours, the average adult male has a shoulder height of about 1.5 meters. On their hind legs, they can easily exceed 3 meters tall. Pretty scary. And yet, very much not the largest land-based apex predator ever to exist. Quite a few beasties from the very distant past can easily outsize the relatively dinky polar bear, and it's really not close. For instance, if we roll back 80 million years to the late Cretaceous, we could encounter species like Dinosuchus riograndensis, an extinct giant relative of modern alligators and caimans, that may have grown to lengths of over 10 meters, and weighed up to 8.5 tons, equivalent to 6 cars, or a whopping 70 D. Johnsons. These monster crocs were equipped with teeth the size of bananas, specialised for crushing through bone and hard shells. Similar extinct crocs, like the Sarcosuchus in the early Cretaceous and Purosaurus in the Miocene epoch, throw up roughly comparable sizes.
It's worth noting at this point that predicting the sizes and weights of very extinct, extremely large prehistoric animals can be very challenging.
Ideally, paleontologists need hundreds of fossil specimens to produce reasonably accurate size predictions, but most of the time, scientists are estimating based on very little evidence, sometimes just 1 or 2 fragmentary fossils.
This means that investigations frequently extrapolate size from much smaller but more completely known related species, or even from living animals. As a result, the conclusions drawn come with large margins of error.
Take the Titanoboa for example. The estimated mass for this giant snake is a lower estimate of 650 kilograms and an upper estimate of 1,800 kilograms. Our lower estimate is a third of the upper. This is not uncommon, with upper size estimates being 2, 3, or even 5 times those of the lower ones. But the misconception here is, this is not a range of sizes that the animal grew to, with the smallest example being 650 kilograms and the largest example being 1,800 kilograms. Instead, the largest example may have been only 650 kilograms. While these, albeit less exciting lower estimates, are equally as valid as the upper estimates, they are rarely reflected in the media when new discoveries are made. With all that in mind, let's turn our attention to everyone's favourite group of ancient reptiles, the dinosaurs. When it comes to determining the largest carnivorous land animal in history, scientists have frequently pointed to the large iconic bipedal theropod Tyrannosaurus rex, a resident of the last couple million years of the Cretaceous period. The average length of this prehistoric celebrity reptile was about 11 or 12 metres, which we actually know from a relatively decent sample size of T-Rex fossils, with a standing height of well over 3 metres, depending on the individual, and even taller when reared up. The average Tyrannosaurus rex is also thought to have weighed somewhere in the region of 5,500 to 8,000 kilograms. Especially large examples of the T-Rex were over 12 metres in length and weighed around 9 tonnes. As a result, Tyrannosaurus has for decades been considered the king of the land carnivores. However, since its initial discovery, many other similar theropod species have been found and identified. When it comes to rivaling Rexy, research has returned a short list of possible contenders, notably Giganotosaurus, Carcharodontosaurus, and Spinosaurus. Despite a relative lack of specimens compared to T-Rex, recent estimates of Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus put them in at around the 13 meters range, which would make them significantly larger than the average Tyrannosaurus rex. They are also thought to have been somewhat heavier than T-Rex, with their larger sizes outstripping T-Rex's relatively robust, stocky build. It's a similar story with Spinosaurus. The most complete Spinosaurus fossils indicate sizes of around 11 meters in length, but scaling to larger, more fragmentary fossils imply maximum body lengths in the 14 to 15 meters range, making it the longest of the theropods. Regardless, Spinosaurus is believed to be considerably less massive than the others, with average-sized Spinos massing only around 4 tons.
In any case, we can only really conclude that all these theropod dinos were very large indeed, and one of them was likely the largest terrestrial apex predator ever to exist.
Let's take to the skies. Here, animals are significantly lighter, but these airborne carnivores still grew to truly fearsome proportions. The largest flying apex predator ever is likely either Quetzalcoatlus or Hapsogopteryx thambema, two closely related pterosaurs from the late Cretaceous, roughly 68 million years ago. Both could reach wingspans of around 10 meters. Modern research suggests that the average largest pterosaurs weighed somewhere in the region of 250 to 300 kilograms.
We can go bigger, much bigger.
Many water-based animals easily outgrow their terrestrial and airborne brethren. Not only does the buoyancy of their marine surroundings provide greater support to their larger bodies, in the bitterly cold oceanic abyss, big bods fare far better at retaining heat. As it happens, we are lucky enough to exist at the same time as the blue whale, which is, as far as we can tell, not only the largest marine animal ever, but the largest animal ever to exist full stop, regularly reaching lengths of between 22 and 25 meters. Larger than average specimens measure up at almost 30 meters. Some unconfirmed reports have described individuals around 33 meters in length. Weight-wise, blue whales can weigh anywhere between 80 and 150 metric tons on average, with the heaviest confirmed individual weighing in at a staggering 173 tons. We'll skip the Dwayne Johnsons for this and head straight to elephants. That's about 30 times as much as the heaviest animal currently on land. Not only that, the biggest being in the oceans also happens to be a carnivorous filter feeder, ingesting thousands of krill in a single gulp, often millions a day. So, can we crown this big blue beast the largest apex predator? No. Despite its size, blue whales are occasionally preyed upon by groups of much smaller orcas, knocking these marvellous blue mammals down the trophic scale to the mid-level. And placing the fearsomely intelligent killer whale at the top of the pyramid as the largest apex predator alive today. Even great white sharks stand little chance against these expert hunters, with their livers becoming somewhat of a delicacy for the orca. While they are more often seen hunting in packs, in 2023 a solo attack was observed where a lone hunter killed a great white and ate its liver within 2 minutes, with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. Despite their name, killer whales are actually part of the dolphin family, and the largest recorded specimen measured 9.8 meters, that's just over 32 feet, from head to tail, and weighed more than 10 tons. But this huge species of orca has only been around for the last 250,000 years. In order to find the largest apex predator in history, we once again have to go back in time to take a look at the monsters of the Earth's ancient oceans.
Let's address the dorsal finned elephant in the room.
The infamously massive aquatic carnivore that skulked through warm coastal waters 23 to 3.5 million years ago. One of the largest marine animals in existence, some projections have suggested maximum weights of up to 100 tons. We are of course talking about the Megalodon, an immense prehistoric fish with an immense present-day reputation. In recent years, the notion of an actual supersized shark has become firmly planted in the popular consciousness. All this hubbub has led to a number of popular megalodon myths. Foremost amongst them, the idea that it continues to lurk in the oceanic depths. While the morbidly curious may relish the idea of extant megasharks, there is zero evidence to suggest the megalodon still exists today. Given that all the physical evidence we have of the megalodon's existence at all is an array of large teeth and some very fossilised vertebrae, if megalodon did still exist, we'd know about it. Another myth concerns its similarity to modern-day great white sharks. In the past, it was claimed that megalodon was a distant ancestor of the great white. This is not actually true. Though megalodon was initially thought to be a direct ancestor of great whites due to its dental similarities, megalodon is now classified within the family Ottodontidae, a completely separate lineage of sharks. This means that great whites are actually very distant cousins of the megalodon, sharing a common ancestor that lived roughly 60 million years ago. It is also commonly stated that the megalodon is essentially a scaled-up version of a great white, and although the two are certainly similar, they are not morphologically identical. Some interpretations suggest that megalodon would have been significantly more slender and elongated than comparatively stocky great whites, and would have been closer in appearance to a mako or blue shark. Others compare it to much larger shark species, like the basking shark or whale shark. The truth is, we won't have a truly informed idea of what megalodon looked like without a full skeleton to study, which, sadly, we do not have.
Indeed, assessing the size and weight of a prehistoric animal like megalodon happens to be even more difficult than it usually is. This is because the skeletons of sharks are entirely cartilaginous, made from the same flexible tissue found in your ears and the tip of your nose.
Cartilage breaks down much easier and faster than bones. Bones are frequently the only part of an animal that leaves a trace. As a result, sharks fossilise really poorly. That's why pretty much all the physical evidence for megalodon we have is their teeth. So, based on all of this,
what is our best guess when it comes to size? Well, the most educated and reliable analysis into the size of Megalodon produce length estimates as low as 10 meters, or around 33 feet. However, an average length is thought to be around 16 meters, or 52 feet, with an average weight of 60 tons. While the largest individuals may have grown up to 20 meters, or over 65 feet, and weighed up to 70 tons, undoubtedly making it one of the largest apex predators ever to exist. But with the Megalodon, sadly the hype vastly outweighs the physical evidence.
So it makes sense to place our crown on a more firmly established head.
And this next one has had most of its head discovered. It also happens to have been a contemporary of the Megalodon shark. Known today as macroraptorial sperm whales, dubbed killer sperm whales, these massive aquatic beasts were ancient relatives of modern sperm whales. One of the main differences between the two was their teeth. They sported rows of huge conical teeth on its upper and lower jaws, specifically designed for hunting large prey. Their teeth were so large, in fact, that today they are recognised as the largest known teeth in history. The largest species of these bygone whales is known as Livyatan Vs, named after both the biblical sea monster and the author of Moby Dick. Modern research into this massive whale species suggests lengths ranging between 13.5 and 17.5 meters, 44 to 57 foot, and weights of between 40 to 57 metric tons. Interestingly, with both Megalodon and macroraptorial sperm whales existing at the same time, it is possible that these two predators competed for food, or even fought one another. While the maximum size estimate for the Livyatan are lower than the upper estimates of the Megalodon, more evidence currently exists to support these gargantuan measurements. And, unlike the Meg, because the killer sperm whale's structure was predominantly made of bone, we are more likely to uncover further evidence of this great Leviathan.
But what if we wound the clock back even further?
To a time of monstrous marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. These creatures coexisted for many millions of years throughout the Mesozoic era. But certain members of the ichthyosaurs outgrew even the largest plesiosaurs. Individuals from the Shastosauridae family of ichthyosaurs, such as Dinosaurus syconiensis, are thought to have reached staggering lengths of up to 21 meters, nearly 70 foot, which is close to the length of your average blue whale, and possibly weighing over 80 tons, that's around 9 T-Rexes. Dubbed the Triassic Giant by the museum where its relatively complete remains are exhibited, the Dinosaurus syconiensis has been considered the biggest marine predator of all time, and with the evidence we currently have, probably the largest apex predator of all time. But, as is the evolving nature of paleontology, as recently as April 2024, the discovery of well-preserved fragmentary jawbone fossils introduced a new species to the table, the Ichthyotitan sevenensis, who has been estimated to have grown up to 25 meters long. That's over 82 feet.
Although a more accurate overall size can't be gauged until more fossils are found, these remains were discovered not too far from where I am right now. Watch this space, I'm off to do some fossil hunting. Thanks for watching.
And remember, you can discover your origins with MyHeritage DNA. They have an offer on right now, so click on my link in the description or scan my QR code to order your kit and use code DEBUNKED to get free shipping. We'll see you next time.